Hello, my name is Rachel Norris, and today we're going to make these very simple little cat earrings with little fishes dangling from their mouths. And we're also going to work through making the ear wires with matching beads to hang them from. They can also be used as little pendants as well. So I hope you enjoy working along with me today. So we're going to learn how to make these little cat earrings, which have little faces and very simple details of the body, little fishes which you can either mount upwards or downwards, and little matching ear wires. So we're going to go through making all of these. And the tools, if I move this to one side, are fairly simple to make the actual earrings. You need chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and flush cutter pliers. Round nose pliers to form and shape round bits of wire, chain nose pliers to sort of manipulate the wire into shapes, and the flush cutter pliers, of course, to give a lovely flush cut, a nice clean finish to the wire. And you'll also need a hammer and a steel block. And I have a range of hammers for different faces. You can see the sizes of the faces here, from large faced hammers to small faced hammers here. And when you're looking at these little designs, I tend to go for the smaller faces because you have less impact, or you can actually focus where you're actually hammering where you want to hammer a little bit more easily. But just use what you've got and just target your hammering appropriately when you're making the pieces up. Those are the basic things you'll need. If you're making up the ear wires, you'll just need probably, it's called a rounding burr tool, and it's sold by Beadsmith and Jewelry Maker, and you can round the end of your wire. If you haven't got one of these, a little needle file or an emery board just to help round the ear wire so it doesn't hurt as it goes through the ear is useful. And the other thing you might need just for making little jump rings, if you're not going to use ready bought ones, I've got a mandrel used for making jump rings. And those are all the basic tools that you'll need today. Now we're just going to list the ingredients that you need. For the wire, you'll need 1mm gauge gold wire or gold tone wire, 0.8mm gauge wire, and some 0.4mm gauge wire. And for the beads, seed beads, you'll need some 8O amber golds, which are a beautiful colour, and some galvanised gold 11Os and some galvanised gold 8Os. And that's all the basic ingredients that you'll need to make up the earrings. Here are the templates that you'll need to use to make your wire, and if you want to zoom in and perhaps take a screenshot, there's a scale here that you can use, that when you can make them to any size, but you can actually use this to help scale your earrings to the right size. So take a screenshot, print this out and use it as your template. I've also included a little extra bonus template of a bunny rabbit if you want to make one of those in the future. But here's a little cat mainframe template. There's a template for the eyes and a little template for the fish. And if I move up everything down a little bit, there's going to be a template for the earring hook as well. So just take a screenshot, zoom in, and print it out, and you can use this as your templates. First of all, we're going to make the little cat frame with 30cm length of 1mm wire. I'm going to make a little loop at one end using the tips of my round nose pliers at one end of the wire to make a little tiny circular loop. And first of all, it starts off like a P with a little straight end. We need to just trim that off, and to make little circle a bit more circular. And then I'm going to go back in again with the round nose pliers and just carry on to start to form the spiral. And I do quite a loose spiral, so you can see I'm just pulling the wire around into a spiral with a little gap between the wire that you formed. If you place it against the diagram, you can see the spacing, the type of spacing that you're going to need. And so actually it might need to be around the other way. There we go, like that. And you can either choose now just to pull this around like so. Put it around using the diagram as a guide, or you can bring your chain nose pliers in and just form a bit more of the spiral by pulling the wire around. I'm just going to put that onto the diagram. So you can do it either way, really. I'm just going to place my finger over the wire spiral already made and just pull it around the diagram to help me. Because basically it's all right if you're making one pendant, because the cat spiral doesn't have to be exactly the same on each for a pendant. But if you're making earrings, you need to make them as mirror image as possible. So this spiral is there for you to use to manipulate to make sure it's the same for each little cat that you make. So you can see how I've used little movements of the chain nose pliers just to make the spiral. Now we're ready to form the rest of the body. So I'm pulling the wire around and the body, using the diagram as a guide, then bringing chain nose pliers in to start to manipulate the side of the body. And I'm going to move the diagram around just to make it a little bit easier for me to work from the side, and you can do this yourself as well rather than make it awkward. So I'm just going to use the chain nose pliers just to start to shape the little cat's body around. The pointy ears. You can take the wire off the diagram if you want to make these ears properly pointy. So I've made a bend to judge where it is. I'm going to take it off the diagram and just push the wire downwards to form the ear, and a little clamp either side, and it just makes it a little bit more pointy. Then opening it back out again just helps to do that. Then you need to do another little push upwards to start to form the top of the head and the loop, and another sharp bend upwards to form the top loop at the top of the head. Now you can bring in the round nose pliers again, insert them just here just to form that loop and pull the wire around. You can see that happening there. Place it over the diagram just to make sure you've got it. Just move the diagram into place in the right position. Yes, that's lovely, and the size is the same. Again, if you're making a pendant, it doesn't matter so much, you know, that you've got it a little bit smaller or bigger, it doesn't matter. But if you're making earrings, you're trying to make things as symmetrical as possible. If you're also, as a tip, making earrings, just make sure, as I form these ears, that I tend to make them at the same time. So I make 2 frames and then work through all the stages at the same time. So it's really easy to sort of keep them looking similar when you're doing things like that. So you can see I made another ear, and then just going to work round, making the side of the cheek. There we go. Just take a bit more time than I am, just to make sure that this is all the same size and really mirror image. And I'll show you in a minute what the frame should look like. So I pulled this around. And then I want to using the diagram as a guide, use some flush cutter pliers just to cut the end of the tail. So we're just going to move on to the next stage. I'll show you the finished frames in just a moment at the next section of the video. So here you can see I've got a completed cat frame, and I've made another one, and to make it sort of mirror image for the earring, all you need to do is turn it over. So it's made using the same template but just turned over to the other side. We need to make that cat's tail nice and curly, so we're going to use very similar techniques to making the spiral. So what I'm going to do is just insert the round nose pliers to the very tip of the tail. Use that little turn of the round nose pliers, trimming off the end, and then make that little spiral, and do the same for the other side. Just make sure you spiral down to the same level. So a little tight little spiral like so. And you should end up with 2 little cats ready to make earrings. One will be facing one way and one facing the other way. We're just going to hammer those, and I'll show you how to do that now. Well, the only thing you've got to remember when you're hammering is just remember to hammer one cat one way and one cat the other way. So bring in my sort of 2-ounce hammer. You can use a larger hammer if you like, because you're hammering the whole shape. So I can use the larger face hammer on this case. Get a steel block, and I'm just going to hammer the whole cat. So just make sure one's facing the other way, one's facing frontwards and right and left. So always manage hammer the whole shape. I always manage to short the lights when I do this. Done it again. See, I've hammered the whole shape, left and right. Just get that light looking a little bit better. And if you actually turn it over, this is the side that's going to be the front. So all the hammer marks appear at the back of the earrings. You've got 2 little cats ready to make up your set of earrings. So we'll move on to the next stage. We're going to make some of the other frames. Before we progress on to making the rest of the frames of the more detailed cat, you can see 2 simple cat frames that we've just made, and I've made them in mirror image, and you can make these up on their own as very simple earrings without even having to add any of the other details onto it. So we will be showing you how to make the earring finding in later stages, but I'll just show you how to attach it to this simple cat frame. So just pick up the little earring finding and just open the bottom loop like a little gate, swinging it open, and then attach the cat at its top loop, just making sure that the nice hammered frame stays at the, just going to move this out of the way, at the front of the earring, and then gently close it, manipulate it closed, and squash it closed with your chain nose pliers. Just manipulate it closed. And one thing I should show you actually is that you need to just squash that top loop so that it's closed, and it doesn't, then the earring finding won't come out of its attachment. But you may need to reshape the frame. In fact, you certainly will. So just take a little bit of time just to move it in and out of position until it's looking nice again. And so here you can see 2 simple earring findings, sorry, 2 simple frames made up into earrings all on their own. But now what we're going to do is progress on to making all the little frames to make these more complex or layered, more detailed cat earrings in the next stages, as well as the earring findings with matching beads. So here is the setup ready for the eye frames. You need about 12cm length of 0.8mm wire, and we're going to use this little template here to make up the eye frame. So I'm just going to do one side of it and show you what to do. So let's move that out of the way. Again, I'm using the template as a guide, and using the midsection of the 0.8mm wire, I'm just going to make a little bend in the centre, and I'm going to take it off the piece of paper just to make a sharper bend with using chain nose pliers. I'm just going to make little triangular bends using the template as a guide, lifting the wire off the paper every so often, make a little bend, check it against the template. Yes, it's in the right place, and if it's not, just make a sharper bend, or make it a different place and then make a sharper bend, because repeated bendings in the same part of the wire can weaken it. So just try and avoid that wherever you can. So I'm just doing another little sharp bend upwards, pull it round. Again, you do the other side exactly the same, and just trim the wire using the template as a guide. So do the other side in exactly the same way, so you'll end up with a little set of eyes, and then just curl the very ends of the wire, just using the template as the same techniques that we used before for curling. And you can see you're just curling the ends of the wire, and not all the way up to the base of the eye. And just make sure you do 2 of those, and exactly the same for each little cat. When you do hammer them, just make sure you hammer only the little curls just at the base of the eye. So use a very small faced hammer if you can. You can see I've got a smaller face, and just hammer just base here, don't hammer anything else because you need to be able to wrap along the eye. So moving on, we're going to make the little fish up now. To make the little fish frame, you can see I've just used that little template here. Just use a 6 centimetre length of 0.8mm wire, make a bend in the middle of the wire, and just like you made the eyes, make a sort of sharp bend for the nose of the fish. I'm just going to shape one side of the little fish around the template, using that as a general sort of guide. Make a bend at the base and trim the tail, and do that the same for the other side, and then just curl the tail ends. That's all you need to do to make the little fish frame. And then lastly, just hammer the whole of the fish using a small to medium face hammer. Just hammer the whole of the fish all the way along, just to work hard on it. And those little loops you can use to hang from the little cat, or you can use the nose section. So we're going to move on to the assembly of putting the whole cat together. In this section, we're going to add some seed beads into the face to make eyes and nose. So take a 30 to 40 centimetre length of 0.4mm wire and thread on 11/0 seed bead to the centre of the wire. And I've chosen a galvanised gold seed bead for this. Place it over the nose section for the moment. Slightly widen the gap here in the nose section, just so it sits in between the wires, and then bring the 0.4mm wire around the corner of the eye once, and then just wrap the 0.4mm wire along the top of the eye frame. Forgive me if I come in and out of the picture, because this is actually a very small little frame. I'm having to zoom in and out with the camera to get you to focus, but it might mean that my hands move out of the camera, so forgive me. Forgive the state of my nails. I've been doing a lot of metal work recently. So wrap along to the top corner, or the middle of the eye at the top, and stop there for the moment. Now I'm going to work back round to the nose. So I'm going to rotate it slightly. I want that nose bead to sit really closely in the centre again, because it's slightly moved out. Make sure you manipulate a little bit so you've got a gap there. Click the wire down at the back of the frame. You've got to pull this fairly firmly, because I want everything to sit into place. And then wrap around the corner of the eye again, putting that into place, and then start to wrap along the top of this wire. If you feel that that bead in the centre isn't going to sit very well, you can also wrap above and below that bead if you feel it's going to move out of place. But if you pull with enough tension, you should be all right. And then last thing, I'll show you a little trick to help it sit nicely in place just before we add the eye beads in. So I've wrapped along to the top corner of this eye. Sorry, the top middle of this eye section. Just grip a tiny little grip by the side of this bead just to help clamp it into place. And then I'm going to thread on an 8/0 amber seed bead to the 0.4mm wire and wrap it into one of the eye sockets. So bring it through into the eye socket so it sits centrally, holding the bead in place with one finger nail, and again forgive my fingernails, so it sits right in the middle of the eye. Just wrap along to the corner, but not to the very edge, because you'll need a little bit of gap to be able to attach it to the cat eye frame, sorry, the cat face frame. So just get that out of the way, and I'll stop, and I'll do the same on the other side. So repeat exactly the same on the other side, and so that you can get a little frame like so. And then what we're going to do is attach that to the cat frame now. So I'm going to bring in one of the frames that we've already made. Just check that it's a lovely smooth side. So I'm going to go for this side being the front. And you can see this little eye frame fits nicely over the little cat, nicely. So holding this in place, I'm just going to start to wrap around both the side of the frame and the eye. So this will be a bit fiddly because you've got to make sure it's all placed nicely, and also not too up near the ears, not too far down, and also that both earrings are going to be the same. So make sure when you make them that you're going to be able to make the other one the same. So go 3 times into this eye, right at the corner of the eye and round the cat frame, face frame, and just do maybe once above, wrap once above for the minute, because I just want to just attach the other side. This wrapper's gonna look far up, so I'm going to use my fingernails, or you can use pliers just to put it down into place, or just use a plier squeeze like so. You can see it on the side of the cat like that. Little plier squeeze just to bring it all into place. And then I'm just going to turn the whole piece around and just attach the other eye. So again, holding everything in place, thread the wire through the outer corner of the eye and around the face 3 times, and then once above the face, once above the eye, and maybe a couple of times more on either side. I'm just going to work on this side to show you. So a couple more times up, just make sure everything's balanced, and then when we get to the ear, we're just going to bring in some 8/0 galvanized gold seed beads, just pop into the ear like so, and then wrap around into place, wrap to the top of the ear and wrap around the top of the forehead. I'm just going to work on the other side of the cat's face and bring you back to bring you to a point at which we can finish this top of this little cat off in a moment. So I'm just going to get to this point. I'm going to come back when I'm a bit more complete on the other side. Now you can see I've got to the top of the head, and I've got both ear beads in place, and I've wrapped to the top of the head there. I'm going to get rid of one of the wires because we don't need both of them, so I'm just going to use the flush cutter pliers to cut as close as I can to the top of that little cat's, the loop at the top of the head as possible on that side, and just use chain nose pliers just to neaten that bit of wire up. And this is optional, but I've put a little detail of an 11/0 bead in. You can either trim that off and clamp that little loop together, or you can add another 11/0 the galvanized gold seed bead into this point, just with the wrap of the 0.4mm wire across the loop, and then you attach using one wrap on this side and pass it to the back of the loop, and one wrap around that side, pulling things tight, and you can just cut this off into place. Now that I think that looks okay like that, one loop around, cut that close to the ear wire as possible, the loop wire as possible, and squash it in. So that's the little cat's face done. So the next thing to do is make up the little fish. So we already made the little fish frame, and we're just going to add an eye bead in. It's really similar to the work we did on the little cat. So I'm going to take a shorter length of wire, that's about 30 centimeters, 0.4mm wire, and I'm going to attach, so bring up the fish frame, and move these out of the way so you can see what I'm doing, and put the bead quite about a third away down the fish at least, so there's a bit of a gap at the top of the fish, and start to wrap along. And you could do this wrap along before you add the bead in. It's just to show you that these are the distances you need for placement of the bead and the amount you need to wrap. So just wrap along one side of the fish with the 0.4mm wire, like so, until you get to the tail, and then returning and just squash those wraps together so they look nice and neat. Chain nose pliers, and then if it distorts, you can just squash the fish back into because you're using quite a bit of force when you're wrapping sometimes, and then press the eye bead into place, and then wrap along the other side of the fish down to the tail. And again, the next bit's optional, just the same as you did with the top of that cat. You can either just cut the wires off into place or add another bead in. And I chose to add another bead, detail bead in. So I'll show you how you did that in a second. How we did that in a second. So I'm just going to get down to here. It's always more difficult when you're working to camera because I'm nowhere near where I normally am with my eyes to be able to see what I'm doing, so bear with me. So first of all, I'm going to get an 11/0 seed bead and just add that into the tail, like so, and wrap to the other side. Maybe make a little gap. I'm going to make a little gap at the base of this tail. There we go. And wrap once round there, passing the other wire to the back of the fish behind the bead, wrap twice round there and cut that one close to the tail, wrap this one once more I think around and cut close to that side of the tail. Then we're going to needle all this up with a chain nose plier squeeze, and then I'm going to bring the tail back together again and squash it into place. So that's the little fish made. So that little fish can be attached either way, upwards with the through the nose, or downwards through the little loops to the cat. And we're going to just go through making some jump rings to make these little fishes up, or you can use ready-made jump rings. The jump rings you need to make are with 0.8mm wire on a 2.5mm mandrel, a bit like one of these. You can use ready-made jump rings, which you can buy quite easily, but if you want to make them in the same colour as your piece, it's quite often nice to be able to know how to make them yourself. So this is a little section which is 2.5mm wide, and I'm just going to wrap a little bit of a spare wire, 0.8mm wire, around the mandrel. Basically, the best thing to do then is leave this for a while, because the wire then has sort of attains a wire memory, and will remember its shape as it needs to be round like a jump ring. So you can leave that for I mean, overnight is best, but you know, at least sort of an hour or so, and then you can cut it and it won't spring apart so easily. So here's one I made earlier. So take that off, or we can leave it. I leave it on the mandrel actually overnight, just to help it. But here's a section I made earlier. Take some flush cutter pliers and cut with a straight edge facing towards the jump ring you want to make once. Then flip the flush cutter pliers over to the other side and place them as close to that cut edge onto the next sort of next rung of wire, next spiral of wire, and cut again, and then you end up with a little jump ring with 2 flush cut edges. And you can do that a few times, and I tend to use this for all my scrap bits of wire. I'll make a few jump rings, and then later on I can just use them really easily, and I haven't got to sort of wait 24 hours to make them. So that's the jump rings made, and we're just going to attach the little fishes to the cat, so we can choose a fish. I'm going to use little loops and have the fish facing downwards, but it really doesn't matter because it looks quite nice either way, and you can attach jump rings through the nose. Use 2 chain nose pliers in this case, just to open up the jump ring. So I'm holding the jump ring with 1 set of chain nose pliers, and it's a little gentle sideways opening of the jump ring. There we go. And I'm just going to place the jump ring around the cat's moustache here, like so, because that's the most fiddly little bit. And I did actually, in one of the little cats, I just attached the fish before I wired the face onto the cat, so it really doesn't matter, as long as as you make sure that the fish sits to the front of the cat when you're wiring the face on. It's probably a little bit easier to do it that way. But here we go. I'm not gripping enough, so I'm just going to manipulate this round so that I've got that ready to attach a little fish onto the front, just through one of the little loops, just placing it onto the jump ring. This is fiddly, and you might sort of curse a bit because you're going to be dropping it on and losing your jump rings. So make sure you work over a surface you can catch any jump rings, and then just get that to close, holding everything in place nicely. You can get that to close on that side, and you just do the same through the other loop of the tail, and you can attach to the other side of the little cat's moustache there, to attach the fishes, so it dangles that way. And if you want to attach through the nose, just attach both jump rings through the fish's nose and through the moustaches in that way as well. So you can have them facing either way up. Now there are your earrings complete, and if you've got your own shepherd hooks, attach them. But I'm just going to show you an optional, in the full demo, I'm going to show you how to make a shepherd's hook. In this section, we're going to use this template here to make a little shepherd hook's earring finding in the same wire colour as your design piece, which is ever so useful. And you can make it in 0.6 or 0.8 millimetre diameter wire, and I've used 0.8 because it's a slightly heavier earring and it's a bit weighty and it might need a bit more of a stronger ear wire. So I'm taking about a 6 or 7 centimetre length of 0.8 millimetre wire, and I'm making a bend just over a centimetre from one end of the wire using chain nose pliers. So I'm going to make an outwards bend like so, and then just use round nose pliers just to make a little circular loop at one end of the wire. Make sure this loop is sort of the same size for each earring. So I'm just going to make a cut near the loop, near where it touches the wire as it runs straight upwards, and I'm going to make a redo the loop so that it's the same. I'm just lift it away from the paper a little bit. I hope it stays in focus, so that it makes sort of an eye pin shape. Like so. And then check that against your template. There we go. So it's about the right size. And adjust that loop if you feel it's got too big or too small. Just make sure that you got it the right size. Place it over the template, and a nice straight bit coming up, and then make a bend outwards to start forming the loop using chain nose pliers. And then you can just use your fingers or pliers just to shape it around. I'm going to use pliers so you can see me shaping it. And the wire's lovely and soft, so that you can, and malleable, so that you can shape it round like so. Just make sure it's the same size, nice and round. That bit's not round enough, so I'm going to make a sideways bend there and come back, lift it off the paper just to make that a little bit rounder. If you want to, you can pop it around a mandrel, a nice round mandrel or pen, just to make sure it's nice and circular. Just to help you make that circle nice and regular and neat and the same size. But just pop it on the paper and just make sure it fits over the template nicely. And then just cut the end of the wire like so. Now the next, you've got to sort of make sure you've got two about the same size like so. And then what you need to do is just round the ends off, or round this end off with a little burr cup, it's a burr, or it's a beadsmith round wire rounding tool, but it's ever so useful because it's got a little diamond burr cup at the end, and you just place the tip of the wire in the burr cup and just rotate around. You just take your time. In the end, a little hard square end of wire will end up rounding off, which is quite nice, and it's a bit more comfortable to put it through your ear like that than if it's sharp. And just take your time, make sure it's really well rounded. If you haven't got one of those, just use a memory file just like that, just to round this off nicely so there's no sharp ends going through your ears. So take your time, make sure that's really soft, and it's got a rounded but blunt end, so it's not going to have any sharp edges that could hurt you as you pop it through your ears. So the next thing to do is just make that bit of bead detail, before you do any hammering on the earring finding. So I'm just going to add in an 11/0 amber seed bead to this earring finding, like so. Just thread it over. If you've got smaller seed beads and you've made too much of a curl, maybe you can add them on before you do the shaping, but these ones fit nicely over the wire as before you weren't doing any even with the shaping. So I'm just going to take a sort of 15cm length, probably a little bit too much I think, of 0.4mm wire. Any scrap bits from using the face of the cat, attaching the cat face, to be honest, and then just start to wrap maybe 3 or 4 times around just above where the bead is. Start to wrap the wire and then catch the bead by just holding it with your fingernail and catch the bead into one wire wrap, and then wrap 3 or 4 times just below the bead, and here you can just cut the wire really close to the loop, like so, and just squash it down, and then move the ear wire around and just make sure it's 4 wraps, and then make sure they're packed tightly together, and cut this end and just smooth the wire down. You don't want anything catching against the earlobe, so smooth with a circular motion in the direction of the wire. And that's the earring finding nearly ready, but we're just going to do one little extra bit of detail. So we've rounded that end, but we just need to make sure that it's quite a nice thing to do, to add a little bit of flattening to the front edge to stop it, to help stop it rotating all the way around. It just helps the wire, the ear wire, stay in place. So holding the bead section well away from the, and you could hold it maybe with pliers. Actually, I'm going to do that now. So holding that section away. In fact, because I normally have a raised surface, I'm going to have to do it with my fingers. Sorry. Normally you can hold it with pliers or whatever, but as long as you haven't got the bead on the edge of the steel block, otherwise you might risk fracturing the bead. Just hammer the leading edge, but no more than that. Don't hammer around this bit, just hammer the leading edge of the ear wire. That's really flat, and then squash along the rest of the ear wire, just gently, just a gentle squash just to work hard on it, and you've got a nice strengthened ear wire with a lovely flattened edge detail that you can pop in your ears. And this bit sort of helps stop the whole thing rotating round too much into the ear hole, and helps keep it in place. To attach it to the little cat, all you need to do is open up this, just like I said, similar to open a jump ring. So hold the ear wire in one hand, open this little loop just with a slight opening mechanism, pop the little cat on through the top loop, so make sure the cat is facing the front of the ear wire, and then close the loop very carefully back into place, a little squash to make sure it stays in position, and you've got your little cat earring attached to your shepherd's hook earring finding in the same wire colour with the detail in the same bead. So here are the earrings finished now, with mirror image little cats, with the fishes hanging from the mouth either up or down, depending on your preference. You've learned how to make earring wires in the same colour with matching seed beads to attach the cats from, which is a lovely skill. And I really hope you enjoy making this design. Well, I hope you enjoyed making the little cat earrings today. I very much look forward to seeing what you make. If you do tag me on Facebook, I'd love to see what you make. JM Guest Designer Rachel Norris, and I look forward to seeing your creations.